Hi guys, so today's video is going to be another video where I read off all of your unpopular opinions. The first one of these videos I asked you all to let me know your unpopular Sanderson opinions because I'm a huge fan of Sanderson, and my goodness, was that video a little difficult for me. But I'm really excited because I decided to ask for your unpopular opinions about the fantasy genre in general, and that's what I'm going to be reading off today. Alright, jumping into it, the very first one says, complicated magic systems are more distracting than they are enjoyable. So I actually completely agree with this particular person's feelings, their unpopular opinion. I think complicated magic systems can be distracting, and I think where this comes into play is when the magic system takes over the story rather than the characters and the plot. Now, whether or not this person and I would agree on the same magic systems being well done or being complicated, that's up in the air. I love this next one. It says, I love trashy YA fantasy love triangles, and I think that is pretty unpopular, and I haven't read a good trashy YA fantasy love triangle in a while, but I'm happy for you that you like that. So the next one says, Game of Thrones is not that good. And I think if you had said that, I don't know, a year ago, that would be very unpopular. But right now, given what I'm seeing of people's reactions, I think maybe that's not so unpopular anymore. The same person also says they think that elves and fairies are overdone. And I think they're certainly done a lot, but if you write a good story and that good story happens to have elves or it happens to have fairies, doesn't bother me. I think this next one is quite unpopular. It says adventure and traveling stories are better than Grimdark. And you know what? I think I'm inclined to agree with that actually, because I find, and take this with a grain of salt because I don't know that I've read a ton of Grimdark, but the stories that I've read that might be considered Grimdark, for me, I find that often Grimdark's intention is to try and show you morally gray characters and to tap into gritty realism. And what ends up happening in a lot of cases, in my personal opinion, is that the author don't quite get it right. They don't show me gritty realism. They don't show me, hey, look how dark the world can be, look how tragic people's lives can be. They end up showing me, isn't this shocking and awful and disgusting? And just to be clear, I'm not saying that authors should shy away from showing me dark content. I understand that dark things happen in real life, and I think that authors are trying to accomplish the tone that a lot of us maybe in our everyday lives don't experience, but in showing us that through a fictional setting, we are able to empathize with it in our own world, meaning people who go through and are victims of terrible things. So I'm not trying to trash on Grimdark, but it's when it starts to feel like you're just trying to shock me by putting really terrible things in your story, and I can't root for any of the characters because all of the characters are just evil. They're varying degrees of evil. Nobody's even kind of morally gray or good and bad a little bit. It's just bad. I don't enjoy that as much as, you know, what can occasionally be a campy traveling story and stuff. That to me, while it can be cheesy sometimes, I would rather have a good guy who's on his way to go save the world than I would have a bunch of evil people and women constantly getting raped. This next one says, The Lord of the Rings is influential but not that good compared to other books. And I don't disagree. I think that a lot of times books, we end up feeling so strongly toward them because of the influence they have and because of the nostalgia wrapped around it and for what they did for their given genres. But quality is so subjective, so I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. The next one says, a book shouldn't need a map in order for the reader to understand the world. And I agree with that. I don't think you should have to have a map, but I like maps. I think they're kind of fun. It's actually difficult for me to figure out if this next one is unpopular because I primarily interact with all of you, and I think a lot of you would agree with this statement. It says it should be fantasy, not romance. Romance shouldn't take over the main plot, in my opinion. So I think a lot of you would agree with that. I personally prefer when the romance in a fantasy story is a subplot and not the main plot, but I don't know that I can say I agree with the it should be, because, you know, if it is primarily a romance and people like that, then, you know, that's just what people like. This next one's quite sweet. It says, I don't think Sarah J. Maas is out to personally attack everyone. So many rant videos, goodness. And that's true. There are a lot of people out there that they seem to want to hate on Sarah J. Maas. If you don't like an author, or I should clarify, if you don't like an author's books, just don't like their books. And if you want to make videos and talk about why you didn't like the book, and your videos maybe are ranty or they're maybe funny, that's fine. It's totally in your right to have that opinion. But it definitely feels like there are some people that go out of their way to trash Sarah J. Maas. And in my opinion, that's a little sad. This next one's cute. It says, in high fantasy, it should be totally normal for women to wear trousers. And you know what? I don't know that too many people would disagree with that, but it is kind of funny how it can be a completely different world and so many things are so creative and interesting and unique, and yet women wearing pants is still this weird, oh no, how dare she? This next one is super unpopular from what I've seen. It says, I hate school settings. I think that's very, very unpopular. I don't hate school settings. I think school settings are perfectly fine, but I know a lot of people really love them. Very rarely do I see people hate school settings, so hats off to you, friends. I think you won for most unpopular. Next one says, longer books don't always mean better, which I agree with. I unfortunately can't comment on this next one at all because I have read zero Neil Gaiman, but it says Neil Gaiman is only popular because he has a nice voice. I don't know. I can't really say. So all of you let me know. Is that the truth? This next one says, I hate love triangles. I don't think that is unpopular with a lot of readers, but I suppose it's unpopular with authors because we do continue to get a lot of love triangles. Personally, I think if there are multiple viable options, then I think, you know, that's realistic. But when it's that very over-the-top, dramatic, these two people are in love with this one person, they just can't choose. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. This next one says, perfect female assassin characters suck and are so boring to read about. I think most perfect characters are boring to read about. I don't know of any other perfect female assassin characters except for Selena from Throne of Glass. So I don't know that I can really respond or comment to this. Speaking of Sarah J. Maas though, this next one says Sarah J. Maas is super overrated. I don't know how unpopular this is. I don't think that's all that unpopular. I think a lot of people think Sarah J. Maas is overrated. I mean, it's weird. So I feel like such a butt because I completely understand what people are saying when they say somebody is overrated, but at the same time, I'm just like, or you just didn't like something a lot of other people liked. And this person's super nice. I know of this person, and I know a lot of you also share similar feelings regardless of whether it's towards Sarah J. Maas. There's plenty of people that feel certain things are overrated. I definitely do. But then I also sit back and I'm like, or I just don't like something that's popular. Does that mean it's overrated? It just means I didn't like it. That's kind of how I feel. Because it's like, well, people can, I don't know if that's making any sense. Basically, I'm saying I feel bad even saying anything's overrated because it's not like my opinion trumps these other thousands of people's opinions. I really like this next one. It says the chosen one trope is great and not overdone at all. And I actually agree. I don't think the chosen one trope has been done to the extreme. There are times that I don't love it and I think it can fall into some similar rhythms as other chosen one stories, but I don't hate it either. This next one says fantasy worlds / magic systems are not as unique in every book. They often follow a similar pattern. I think that's very true. I have absolutely nothing against that. I don't think books have to be extremely different to be good. I think if they fit nicely within their genre, that's completely fine with me. This next one's going to ruffle some feathers. It says Harry Potter books really aren't that good. And I can't really comment because it's been years since I read any Harry Potter. I never finished the series, probably won't ever finish the series. But there are a lot of people that really like those books, and if you don't like them, it can be a lonely world. This next one says, I don't like the cliche wizard mentor. I don't know if I have a feeling on that, but that's probably pretty unpopular. I think a lot of people like that. This next one says, and it's quite contradictory to what somebody else said earlier. I enjoy romance and fantasy books, and I don't mind when it's a predominant part. Good for you. I don't know if that's unpopular or not, and I don't know how much of an opinion I have. If it's a good story, I usually prefer the romance to be a subplot, but a good story is a good story. This next one says, there is a lot of bloodshed. It seems characters have no moral qualms about killing others. That's true. I personally like when books kind of explore the repercussions of violence, and a lot of fantasy doesn't do that. It's just kill, 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 and it's like, I'm tired, but they have no reaction emotionally to having done all the killing. This next one's getting a bit specific. It says, The Way of Kings has no plot and a few plot holes, but they admitted that they're still reading it, LOL. All I can say is, keep on reading. This one is super unpopular. It says, I hate that there's always magic. Or maybe it's not unpopular, maybe I've just not heard other people say that before, but that's true. There's definitely a lot of times magic in fantasy. I can think of a few books that don't have magic. Maybe I should make a video about books that don't have magic. But that'd be a pretty slim list. I don't even know if I could come up with 5. You guys should leave your recommendations. What are some fantasy books that don't have magic? The one that I can think of off the top of my head is Long May She Reign. That's a YA. It's kind of like a YA murder mystery. It just takes place in a different world. The next one says the fantasy genre is highly underrated in the entertainment industry compared to others. That's tough because while Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings had a lot of success, I think it's true that, well, Harry Potter has been successful, and I guess that's considered fantasy by a lot of people. So I think there have been times that we have gotten some that have become very popular, but overall it's not like I've seen a lot of fantasy adaptations. That's changing now, though. This one says, Harry Dresden is a rather boring character. I think that the Dresden Files are entertaining. From the few that I've read, I've enjoyed them, so I don't know. Man, you guys are getting super specific now. What is happening? This person says, Strange the Dreamer is boring, with an exclamation point. It is boring. I really like it, though, but it's not super action-packed. It is not with tons of fighting. It's a little slow moving. I almost quit that book, but I'm glad I pushed through and kept reading because I ended up really liking it and I loved the duology as a whole. This next one says the Lord of the Rings films are more enjoyable than the books. I haven't read all the books. My husband's read all the books and I think he would be inclined to agree with you. Okay, this next one is interesting. We've had somebody say they hate when the romance takes over. We had somebody else say they don't mind. This person says, I love a romance-heavy fantasy story more than an adventure-heavy one. So, I actually really do love a fantastic romance. I think the problem is I just haven't seen that many. And so I think I more than often will say I would disagree with this feeling, but I don't know if I do. I just don't find really fantastic romances written in that many fantasy stories. This next one says, world building is not that important in the first book if we're talking about a series. So my feelings toward world building would be that the world building should serve a purpose. If I am learning about some culture, if I'm learning about some history and some political situations that have nothing to do with the plot, or they don't enhance the story, they don't add to the story, then yeah, I would say that leave that out. Just wait, because if we're gonna get to it later, cool, and we'll get to it and it can come about organically. But I feel like what this person, I don't want to speak for them, but I don't like the giant info dumps that don't end up being important or significant, and they're just for the purpose of like, look at my beautiful shiny world, isn't it amazing? There are still so many other ones that you guys sent me, but I just don't have the time, unfortunately, to talk about them now. Maybe I'll do a part 2 at some point. Feel free to leave your unpopular opinions in the comment section down below. If I am able to do a part 2 to this, or maybe even a part 3, then I can try to take some from not only Instagram, where I asked about this in my Instagram stories, but I can also see about some of the comments that you guys leave and read off some of your unpopular opinions from that. As always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Let me know which of these opinions you completely agree with and which ones you don't agree with at all, and I'll see you all later. Bye.